We just don't want you to study here. We want you to stay and continue building your dreams in Canada. So as I mentioned, my name is Brendan Rafferty, and I'm an outreach officer with IRCC. And welcome to today's information session on Journey to Permanent Residency in Canada for international students. I'm being honored once again in this presentation with my colleague, Ariana Brooks. Before I begin, please remind that policies and programs can change. Please visit IRCC's official website on a regular basis for up-to-date information. And as mentioned, this session is being recorded, and the information being presented today is accurate as of today. So our agenda today, in today's information session, we'll be going over the main information you need to know in order to apply for permanent residency. We will talk about how a student can transition from full-time study to full-time work after graduation. We will address some important immigration concepts. We will then explain how express entry, can be your pathway to permanent residence. Lastly, there will be a question and answer period, so that if at the end of the event, if you have a question that was not addressed during the presentation, please feel free to submit it and we will answer questions one by one at that time. Please note that we can only answer general questions. We will not be able to discuss questions that are specific to your individual situation. I also want to point out that almost all of the text in today's presentation acts as a hyperlink to additional information found on IRCC's website. After today's event, this presentation will be shared with the University of Ottawa, and you'll be able to click on the hyperlinks as they will bring you to web pages with more information on topics covered. Now that you are in school and have your study permit, let's discuss working while studying in Canada as an international student. Having Canadian work experience will be beneficial for you, especially if you want to apply for permanent residence, as it is a requirement for most economic immigration programs. Prior to working, you'll want to review the conditions that are written right on your study permit to see if it authorizes you to work. The first way you can gain work experience is through on-campus employment. There's no limit to the number of hours you can work on campus. However, many universities have their own internal policies that limit the number of hours that can be worked. For this reason, you will want to touch base with your international student advisor for this information. You can work on your school campus as long as you are a full-time student and have a valid study permit that states that you are authorized to work. As for off-campus employment, it is important to note that there are limits to the number of hours you can work. During regular school semesters or terms, you may work up to 20 hours a week. During regular scheduled breaks, you can work unlimited hours. What schools consider regular scheduled breaks may differ by institution and even program. For this reason, you should check with your international student advisor. In most cases, breaks refer to winter and summer breaks along with reading weeks. It is important to understand that working more than 20 hours a week off campus while you're studying is a violation of your study permit conditions. So if you work 15 hours one week, you cannot work 25 hours the next week. This is a fixed, non-flexible cap of 20 hours a week. If you do work more than 20 hours, you can lose your student status. You may have to leave Canada, and it can impact future immigration applications you may want to submit, such as work permits or permanent residence. Lastly, you can also gain work experience through a co-op or internship opportunity. Some study programs include work experience as part of their curriculum. These work terms are often in your field of study, which will allow you to better prepare for the job market after you graduate. You'll need to apply for a co-op work permit if you did not already obtain one when you applied for a study permit. Let's fast forward into the future to when you have completed your studies. What happens now? Once you receive your completion letter or final transcript from your school, you must stop working immediately. Your next steps depend on the following scenarios. Do you want to leave Canada? If yes, then you must leave Canada before your study permit expires or within 90 days of receiving your letter of completion or final transcript, even if your study permit is still valid, whichever of these scenarios comes first. Now, do you want to stay in Canada? If you wish to remain in Canada, then you must either be accepted to a new study program or apply to change your status to become a worker or visitor. Many of you will want to work following graduation, and many of you will be eligible to apply for a post-graduation work permit. A post-graduation work permit is a permit that is issued to recent graduates from eligible Canadian post-secondary institutions. This permit is an open work permit, which means you can work for any employer in Canada. The length of this work permit is valid for you. The length that this work permit is valid for you will depend on the length of study program that you completed. For programs that are longer than 8 months, but less than 2 years in length, we may give you a post-grad work permit, as we call it, issued for the same amount of time as your program length. For example, if you completed a 1-year program, you may receive a work permit for up to 1 year. For students that complete educational programs of at least 2 years in length or more, we may give you a post-grad work permit that is valid for 3 years. And just to clarify, it is important to remember that when IRCC is determining how long to issue this type of work permit, we will be looking at the length of your educational program and not how long it took you to complete that program. Something I'd like to highlight as well is that this document issued once in a lifetime and cannot be renewed. If you plan on continuing your studies in Canada, it is important that you figure out when is the best time to apply for this work permit. This may be now, or maybe at a later date when you have completed all further educational programs you wish to pursue. In order to receive this permit, you must apply within 180 days of receiving written confirmation that you successfully completed your program. If you apply for a post-grad work permit within 90 days of receiving your written confirmation stating that you completed your education, or before your study permit expires, whichever scenario comes first, you can begin working full-time hours immediately. However, if your study permit is expired, you can still apply for the post-grad work permit, but you will not be able to work while your application is being processed. And you will need to request a restoration of status in order to maintain legal status while you're in Canada. Now let's talk about some important immigration concepts. The first concept to understand is ensuring that you always have valid status in Canada. As a temporary resident, your status is confirmed by having a valid visitor record, study permit, or work permit. It's important to note that a temporary resident visa or an electronic travel authorization does not give you legal status in Canada. These are simply used for traveling to Canada. If you apply to extend your time in Canada, there's a good likelihood that you may hold what is called maintained status at one point or another. Maintained status refers to a person that has applied to extend their status in Canada before their current status expires. If this is the case, your current status will be maintained until a decision is made on your new application you submitted, which allows you to remain in Canada in the meantime. It is important to note that if you leave Canada while your application for an extension is in process, you will lose maintained status. For example, if you hold a study permit and you apply for a study permit extension, as long as you applied for your extension before your current application expires, you're authorized to keep studying on your original permit until a decision is made on your subsequent one. This being said, if you'd like to change your status in Canada, for example, from a worker to a student, you must stop working immediately once your status expires and wait for a decision on your study permit application. To avoid this, we always encourage you to apply at least 3 to 4 months prior to your status expiring. Many of you will want to travel outside of Canada to visit family, friends, or simply to explore another country. It is important that before you leave Canada, you will want to review what is required to come back into the country. Depending on your situation, you may need to apply for a new temporary resident visa or an electronic travel authorization in order to re-enter Canada. Because the requirements vary, IRCC has created a Come to Canada tool, which asks you a few questions about your situation, and it will let you know what requirements you may need. We know that COVID-19 has impacted us all. For this reason, IRCC has implemented some facilitative measures for many aspects of immigration, including how we review post-grad work permit eligibility. If your studies were on hold or part-time during the winter, spring, or summer of 2020 semesters due to COVID-19, this will not impact your post-grad work permit eligibility. As of fall 2020, you must have returned to full-time studies. If you were studying inside Canada and your classes were moved to an online-only format due to the pandemic, you will still be eligible for a post-grad work permit. Lastly, students who are overseas and participating in distance learning due to COVID-19 are also eligible for a post-grad work permit. However, in-person learning is strongly encouraged. For more information, you can visit canada.ca or our website for more information on how COVID-19 is impacting immigration programs. Now that we've addressed COVID-19 considerations, I will now introduce you to a very important aspect of immigration called National Occupation Classification. The National Occupational Classification, or NOC as we call it, is an organizational system used by the Government of Canada to classify jobs and occupations. Think of this as a giant dictionary where each occupation will be defined as NOC 0, A, B, C, or D. This is all determined based on the industry and skill level needed. All jobs, including my own and Ariana's, the cashier down the road, and your professors will have a 4-digit NOC code which represents our positions. The 3 NOC categories within the black border on the presentation screen right now that you see, excuse me, could make you eligible for the federal portion of express entry permanent resident programs. These same 3 NOCs are the ones that typically require post-secondary education or trade experience. Even when you're not ready to apply for permanent residence, it's good to know what programs will likely require. I will also like to point out that later this year, we are looking forward to having the NOC system be replaced with a new system called TEER, that's T-E-E-R. Our website will be updated to reflect this change once it has been implemented. Now that you understand the NOC system, let's move on to talk about documents we need for your permanent resident application. Everyone must prove their language ability by taking an approved language test. Language tests are used to determine speaking, listening, reading, and writing abilities in one of Canada's official languages, English or French. Language test scores will be equated to the Canadian Language Benchmarks, or CLB, which can also be found on our website. Test results must be less than 2 years old when you complete your express entry profile and when you apply for permanent residence. If you completed your highest level of education outside of Canada, you may want to have an assessment to have your education recognized in Canada by getting an education credential assessment. For some pathways to permanent residency, it is desirable to have higher levels of education. In these cases, you'll want to ensure that your highest level of education is recognized. Assessments need to be completed by an IRCC designated organization in order to show what level of the foreign program is equal to in Canada. This is not needed for Canadian degrees, diplomas, or certificates. As I mentioned above, most permanent residence programs require work experience. IRCC will refer to the work experience requirements in terms of full-time and part-time hours required. IRCC refers to full-time work experience as being a maximum of 30 hours a week for a period of 12 months. This is equal to 1,560 hours in a 1-year period. Economic immigration programs will also recognize part-time work experience. In this case, this would be equal to 15 hours a week for a period of 24 months. So if you're looking for employment, Job Bank is the official Government of Canada website that caters to both international students and employers. Job Bank is not only a platform to search for employment, the site also consists of job matching services, which can help students get in touch with employers who can support them in their immigration process. This applies to many permanent resident programs in addition to the pathways I will be sharing with you today. Express Entry. So, Express Entry is our flagship pathway to permanent residence. Former international students are good candidates for Express Entry because of their age, education, language ability, Canadian work experience, and established community networks. Express Entry is a step-by-step process. The first step is to create an Express Entry profile. This profile is valid for 1 year, and it's important to always keep it up to date. Once the profile has been created, those who appear to meet the criteria in one or more of the 3 federal immigration programs managed through Express Entry, foreign skilled workers, foreign skilled trades, and Canadian experience class, are automatically entered into the Express Entry pool of candidates. When a candidate is accepted into the pool, they are given a comprehensive ranking system we call CRS. It's a score, and they are then ranked against others who are in the pool of candidates. Top ranking candidates are then invited to apply online for permanent residence. On a regular basis, the highest scoring candidate will be sent an invitation to apply for permanent residence. Only once a candidate has received their invitation to apply can they submit their application for permanent residency. Now that we know the basics, let's take a look at the 3 federal programs under Express Entry. The first, which is the Federal Skills Trade Program. To be eligible for the Federal Skilled Worker Program, you will need to have had at least 1 year of continuous work experience in a NOC 0A or B occupation within the last 10 years. This work experience counts even if you're studying in Canada at the same time, or if you completed this work experience while abroad. For this category, the language proficiency is on the higher side, requiring you to have a minimum score of CLB 7 in each of your tested abilities. For context, this would mean that your English or French proficiency has to be at an intermediate or advanced level. The education needed is the secondary school level or above. So as you are all international students, all of you should meet this requirement. This is the only Express Entry program that makes education an explicit requirement. As well, the Federal Skilled Worker Program has its own point system that you have to satisfy as well. This system will look at the specific information, including adaptability categories. As part of the adaptability category, this will look at factors that will help you establish yourself in Canada. This includes declaring whether you have relatives in Canada and if you did school or work in Canada. The second program is the Federal Skilled Trades Program. This program is looking for 2 years of work experience within the last 5 years in one of the designated NOC B trade occupations that are listed on our website. For example, this may include occupations including employment such as those as electricians, welders, and restaurant managers. The language proficiency for this category is on the lower end, which would be at a CLB 5 for speaking and listening, and a CLB for reading and writing. There is no specific education requirement for this category. However, having education will give you a higher likelihood of being selected in the Express Entry pool. Lastly, you will need to have a job offer for full-time employment or have a certificate of qualification in one of the designated NOC B occupations. For the third and final federal program with Express Entry, there is the Canadian Experience class. For those work experience components, you'll want to have 12 months of skilled experience completed in Canada within the last 3 years. This work experience does not need to be continuous. For language proficiency, you'll be wanting you to have a CLB 7 if your experience was at a NOC 0 or A position. For people with work experience at NOC B, you will only need a CLB5. There is no educational requirement for the Canadian Experience class. However, completing an educational credential can give you higher points, which increases your chances of being invited to apply. This being said, all work experience completed while you were a full-time student cannot count towards work experience if you're applying under CEC. This is a great program for once you have spent time working for an employer in Canada while under your post-grad work permit. Now that we are familiar with the 3 federal programs, let's talk about the point system used to assess express entry candidates. This system, once again, is called the Comprehensive Ranking System. The Comprehensive Ranking System, or CRS, is broken down into 2 categories. We calculate your core points and additional points. The core points are determined by factors such as your education, your work experience, and age. The additional points we will discuss momentarily. These 2 groups of points will give you your total. The core points for the CS points will take into account your work experience, education level, language proficiency, and age. If you are curious to see what your score would be, you can see this by using the CRS calculator tool that's found on our website. The detailed breakdown of how points are awarded is also available on our website. Again, only candidates who have the highest CRS scores in the express entry pool are eligible for one of the programs will receive an invitation to apply. The minimum CRS points needed to get an invitation to apply varies. However, candidates can see the scores from the most recent rounds of invitation on our website. As you saw, 50% of your CRS score comes from your additional points. These points can come from a variety of factors. You can get up to 600 points by receiving a provincial or territorial nomination. Your province's immigration website will be the place to find more information on this. If you have a valid job offer, you can receive 50 additional points for a NOC 0A or B position, or 200 points for an executive position, which is under NOC code 00, like NOC 00. If you haven't already, we encourage foreign nationals such as yourselves to use Canada's National Employment Services to find a job. Job Bank is great because it's there that, Job Bank is great because there is a job matching component for the website where employers may be referred your job profile if it fits the pre-requirement needed for the job they posted. This will allow you to connect with Canadian employers and improve your chances of securing a job in Canada. Completing a post-secondary education in Canada can give you extra points. You can get an extra 15 points for completing a diploma or certificate program of 1 to 2 years. Or you can get an additional 30 points for completing a diploma or certificate program of 3 years, a bachelor's degree, a postgraduate degree. French proficiency will also give you up to 50 additional points. French proficiency can also boost your score. If you score well on your French test, you can gain an additional 25 points. If you also can speak English well, you can gain an additional 50 points. Lastly, by having a Canadian citizen or permanent resident brother or sister in Canada, you can gain an additional 15 points. Now that we've discussed the point system, we will move on to the next steps. If you're among the highest ranking candidates in the express entry pool, you will receive an invitation to apply, and you have 60 calendar days to submit a complete application. Documentation must be submitted electronically through your online account, and if there are any documents that are not in English or French, they will need to be translated. A complete application means that, with limited exceptions, all supporting documentation must be submitted with the application. You can start to prepare these documents prior to applying if you want to get a head start on the application process, as some of them take a while to get. I will give you a moment to read the slide and get a sense of what is typically required for a permanent resident application. As well, your profile will expire after a year. If you still wish to be considered for express entry, you will need to create a new profile after it expires. Keep in mind, even if you're not eligible for express entry, there are still plenty of ways to continue your time in Canada. Before we finish talking about permanent residency, I want to further discuss what funds are required to immigrate. For context, application fees are $825 for the primary applicant, same for a spouse or partner, and $225 for each child. If you have to get a positive decision on your application, you will also need to pay a right of permanent residence fee of $500 for the primary applicant, and which is also required if you have a spouse or partner immigrating with you. Additionally, for express entry applicants coming through either the foreign skilled worker or foreign skilled trades programs, they must demonstrate that they have enough money to support themselves while they are in Canada. For context, a family of one will need to show that they have just over $13,000. The larger the family, the higher the funds required. These numbers are found also on our website. I will also like to point out that if you are living and working in Canada with a valid job offer, you will be exempt from this requirement since we know that you already have income in Canada. I also want to highlight the benefits of Francophone immigration. The benefits of Francophone immigration is not just for people whose primary language is French. It can also be for individuals who may speak it as a second language or those who are fairly proficient in it. As mentioned before, French speakers can gain additional express entry points. These additional points may be the reason you receive an invitation to apply. You also become an asset to employers. French being one of Canada's official languages, employers seek out French-speaking candidates to better serve their clients and to tap into new markets both inside and outside of Canada. Employers and candidates alike both enjoy the benefits of Mobilité Francophone. Mobilité Francophone allows for eligible French-speaking candidates to have access to work permits that are timelier and more cost-effective for the employer. While there are many communities across Canada that will support your Francophone life in Canada, IRCC supports 14 specific communities across Canada that are set up to make sure that Francophone newcomers and their family feel at home. For all newcomers in Canada, there are agencies all throughout the country that are here to help you adjust to life in Canada. These agencies can help you or your family members find employment through job interview training, employment counseling, and by connecting with employers associated with employers. You can also access information and courses on aspects of Canada you may not know. This includes accessing healthcare in Canada, what laws and rights you have, educational opportunities, and more. There are also settlement agencies that are specialized in providing support for Francophone newcomers as they integrate socially, economically, educationally, and culturally into their new homes in Canada. After you become a permanent resident, you can benefit from free French or English courses so you can improve your current language abilities. So you can gain more work experience through one of our main temporary residence programs, such as the Temporary Foreign Worker Program and the International Mobility Program. These are alternatives to express entry. Alternately, you can look into another federal program that may work for you. For those that are entrepreneurs, you may like the Startup Visa Program. If you're interested in living in very specific areas of Canada, the Atlantic Immigration Program or the Rural and Northern Immigration Pilot may be right for you. As well, the provinces and territories all have specific permanent residence programs depending on their needs, and you may be eligible for those as well, so please explore. So for more information, our website is an invaluable resource when it comes to understanding Canada's immigration system. For case-specific inquiries, you can also contact our Client Support Center, or you can use our online web form. As well, you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, where we share information that may be useful to you. So as we come to the end of this session, I'd like to thank you all for your time during this information session.